Sorry about that 4 month hiatus. I had a busier semester than I thought I was going to, and I didn't actually have time to record anything. On the bright side, I got up to 15 subscribers over the hiatus, so I get to do another character video, and it's one that I've been looking forward to for a while. It's Zane, the Master of Ice from Lego Ninjago. This is a character who meant a lot to me as a kid, and in retrospect, it makes sense why. We'll go into that. He's still means a lot to me because I've realized he's the first autistic character who I actually related to, who I went back and realized, oh, that's why I liked him so much. Autistic coded like me. All right. First, I know he's a robot. I've heard various arguments about whether or not him being a robot technically disqualifies him from being counted as an autistic character. To that I say, we can still count him. He's not just a robot, for one thing. I mean, his heart thing going on in this picture, you can see it. Sorry. He has a heartbeat. I mean, when we see it in the season 3, it pulsates with light, so it's not just a power core. No one knows what it is. He's not even completely sure. And it gives him some sort of consciousness. And Pixel, when she comes into contact with it, becomes much less robotic, starts exhibiting more emotions herself. So obviously something about this power core, whatever it is, grants him a consciousness. He's not just a computer. And even if you want to bring it down to him being a computer, his inventor was a brilliant, eccentric, solitary guy who chose to live out in the middle of nowhere. And then when he got lonely, made himself a robot for company, and then made that robot another robot to keep the first robot company. So it stands to reason from what little screen time he has, Dr. Julian seems to exhibit a lot of autistic traits as well. So I think it stands to reason to assume that the robot he built for himself probably would be programmed to exhibit autistic traits. And I never programmed that into you, Dr. Julian. He says this about Zane's cooking skills, but I think it does illustrate my point. Not everything in Zane is down to programming. So even if there was some program this robot to behave in an autistic manner, there's also more going on than just the programming. So I think Zane counts, even if you want to argue he can't technically have autism. He still exhibits the traits. On with the video. From the very beginning of the show, if there's one thing they want us to know about Zane, well, two things they want us to know about Zane. He's very smart, and he's weird. He's very different. He takes things really literally, doesn't understand sarcasm, even this adorable little exchange when he meets Pixel for the first time that the camera is cutting out the bottom part of, so sorry about that, but you're not missing much. It's just him restating his name. And in season 4, Zane, you're back. What's on my back? Very literal, very literal. And he even knows he's different, and it's something that bothers him for at least the first 3 seasons. It bothers him more so in the first half of season 1 before he figures out why. But even in season 3, when he's sort of made his peace with his identity, he still feels different until he meets Pixel, who's more like him. So, very important. He feels less different once he meets somebody like him. I think that's important. For me, I think I watched the first 2 seasons of Ninjago about a year after they first aired, when they went to Netflix. So I was about 7? And I remember liking Zane because he was different. He was more like me. He was different, kind of like the way I had always felt sort of different, a little odd, not quite getting what was going on, what other people were talking about. Feeling a little bit off. And so that was fascinating to me about this character for a long time, and I was very invested in especially those first few episodes of season 1 where he's like, I'm a little different. I don't know why, no one else knows why, it doesn't make sense, and he doesn't know his past, so he doesn't he's looking for answers a lot of those first few episodes, and even further on until he finds his dad in season 2. But one episode that really stuck out to me that I watched over and over was season 1, episode 7, TikTok, where the secret of Zane's origins are finally revealed and we discover dude's a robot. And in retrospect, I can see why. Like this episode fascinated me as a kid. It was my favorite. It's probably still my favorite episode in all of Ninjago. All of what I've seen. I've seen seasons 1 through 5. I'm working my way through. But I remember the first time I watched it being so deeply affected by the reveal of who he was and what his past was, and him finding out why he's so different from everybody else. And then when his friends show up and he tells them, he does this whole thing like, guys, I'm a robot. They accept him for it. They accept his difference and they tell him, you're still our brother. You're still part of the group. You know what's what now. You know who you are, and they're really happy for him. Even though they're like, whoa, dude, you probably need some time to recover from this. But once that happens, they're just happy for him. They accept him, and I think that was, in retrospect, like that's a huge part of why this episode meant so much to me. Was like he gets answers. He figures out why he's different from his friends. And then and the fact that he's different doesn't go away. He's still different. He's still a little weird. But everyone knows why now, and they've accepted that as part of him, and nothing really changes. They just all have answers now. So the fact that he figures out what's going on and then doesn't get rejected by the people around him was powerful to me. And also the fact that he gets stronger because of it. Like the fact that he knows now who he is and why he's always been different actually makes him stronger, increases his power level like this, was also powerful to see. The fact that I'm saying the fact that a lot today. But yeah, watching that happen, watching him learn who he was and become stronger with the knowing was it struck a chord with me as a kid in a way that I don't think I completely understood until later. Watching this with new eyes and learning that a lot of other kids had similar experiences watching this, as far as like, oh my gosh, he's like me, and then oh, I'm on the spectrum. That's why that meant so much to me. He's different, and he doesn't stop being different. The answer to his feelings of being separate is not to become normal. The answer is just to know why. And then he becomes more confident with himself. He gets stronger. Their bonds all get stronger because they all know now. So I think watching that happen was, I think, the main reason this episode meant so much to me as a kid. And then later on in season 2, watching him find his dad and get more answers, and his dad sort of reaffirming, like, no, excuse me, gosh. Like, I love you the way I made you. I made you the way you are for a reason. When Zane's asking for alterations, I don't think you need to be different, I think was something that really spoke to me about this character as a kid, even before I really understood why. And why this character is still precious to me now. I still watch the kids show. It's fine. I actually have been kind of making a point to go back through knowing what I know about myself and why I like this character as a kid, and being like, oh yeah, I remember watching this for the first time and being like, whoa, this is so cool. Anyway, rant over. So yeah, Zane, one of the more, he's kind of an interesting one as far as autistic presenting, I guess you could say, characters go. Because yeah, he's a robot, but Somewhat ironically, he's less robotic than a lot of other autistic characters in fiction. And I honestly think that's a lot of props have to go to the voice actor Brent Miller for that. And the fact that, like, I don't know if the creators, when they came up with this character, like, I don't know if their intention was to create an autistic coded android. Maybe it wasn't. But whether it was intentional or not, they did create this really spectacular, fully fleshed out, three-dimensional character who's not just his limitations. He's a character a lot of kids, I think, related to because he's a little different. I'm a little different. This is exciting, and watching him figure that stuff out, find later, like be able to make better connections with, I'm just going to say, other people. I know she's an android too, but like I said, they have consciousness now, so anyway. So yeah, watching him come into his own a little bit through learning why he's different from everybody else was powerful for me, and I think powerful for a lot of other kids. And, if you're a parent watching this thinking, what autistic characters can I introduce my child to? Zane's a good place to start. And of course, I remember watching season 3, the end of season 3, because it had been a few years since I watched Ninjago. We didn't have Netflix for a while, and in the in-between time, seasons 3 through 5 had come out. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'll watch this again. And I kind of knew what was going to happen to Zane in the end, and I thought I could handle it, and I just started crying. I was like, I'm crying over a kid's cartoon. I hope nobody's watching this. But no, I was deeply emotionally affected by his sacrifice in the end to defeat the Overlord, and then of course just over the moon happy when he came back in season 4 and watching him figure out his new body, as it were, as far as the Titanium Ninja goes. I gotta say, I like the Titanium Ninja. Kinda miss the original, only because, like, even when he becomes able to look more human again later, it's after the redesign, which I'm not a fan of. But, more, I don't need to go into a rant on my stylistic opinions. But yeah, so props to the creators of Ninjago for, whether intentionally or not, creating this incredibly relatable, three-dimensional, autistic representing character, and seriously well done to the voice actor Brent Miller for imbuing this character with emotions that are like, they're very real and intense. His emotions are just as real as anybody else's in the show. They just present themselves a little differently, and I think that's important, and that's really cool. And yeah, I could talk for probably another 15 minutes about how much I love this character, but I want to keep this short. So that's all for Zane right now. Maybe once I watch more, I'll make a sequel, because there's a lot of other content I could mine for examples of this. But for now, that's all.